What would you do if you were a cook in the middle of a war zone, armed with nothing but an axe, and suddenly faced with a Nazi tank? Run? Hide? Not Ivan Sereda. This is the unbelievable true story of how one man's courage and quick thinking turned the tide of a battle and made him a legend. War has a way of creating unlikely heroes, and the Eastern Front of World War II was full of them. But few are as unexpected as Ivan Sereda, a cook who went from chopping vegetables to chopping his way into history. Today we'll look at the day he single-handedly took on a Nazi tank. Before we start, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Before Now. Let's get into it. So, who was Ivan Sereda? Ivan Sereda was born on July 1, 1919, in the Ukrainian village of Alexandrovka, now part of the city of Kramatorsk, in a peasant family. Soon, he and his family moved to the village of Galitsindovka in the Donetsk region, where he graduated from school. Later, he studied at the Donetsk Food Technical School. In November 1939, Ivan was drafted into the Red Army as a cook in the 91st Tank Regiment of the Northwestern Front. By July 1941, his regiment was near Dvinsk, now known as the Latvian Daugavpils, as Soviet units, suffering heavy losses, retreated east. He wasn't a trained fighter. His only job was to feed the hungry soldiers so they had the strength to fight. Back then, being a military cook wasn't easy. It wasn't just about making soup, it was about survival. Food was scarce, and Soviet soldiers relied on whatever their cooks could scramble together. But in the chaos of war, even a cook had to be ready for anything. And on one fateful day, Ivan Sereda proved just how ready he was. To truly understand the incredible nature of Ivan Sereda's story, we must look at the Eastern Front, the most brutal and deadly theater of World War II. Here, Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union clashed in a conflict of unimaginable scale and ferocity. Entire cities were reduced to rubble, millions of lives were lost, and the fighting was relentless. In 1941, Hitler launched Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history. Over 3 million Axis troops, backed by thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery, stormed into Soviet territory. Their goal was to crush the Soviet Union quickly, but the campaign turned into a grueling war of attrition. The Eastern Front became a battleground of extreme suffering, where both sides endured staggering losses and civilians faced unimaginable horrors. For the Soviet Union, the early stages of the war were catastrophic. The Red Army was underprepared, struggling to hold back the Nazi advance with limited supplies and outdated equipment. Yet Soviet soldiers displayed remarkable resilience. The Eastern Front was a daily battle for survival, where even non-combat roles could turn into life or death situations. Ivan Sereda's story is a testament to how war could thrust anyone into extraordinary circumstances. During the summer of 1941, as the Eastern Front raged, Ivan Sereda found himself in an extraordinary situation. His unit had been sent out on maneuvers, leaving him alone at the camp with the sole responsibility of preparing food for their return. The quiet of the forest was soon shattered by the rumble of approaching tanks. At first, Sereda assumed they were Soviet reinforcements, or perhaps his comrades returning early. He stepped out, ready to wave them in, but his heart sank when he realized the truth. These were not Soviet tanks. They were German Panzer 38T tanks, manned by enemy soldiers. For most people, the sight of enemy tanks rolling into their camp would have sent them running for cover, but Ivan Sereda was not like most people. With remarkable courage and resourcefulness, he decided to take matters into his own hands. Armed with nothing but an axe and unshakable determination, Sereda prepared to defend his post against overwhelming odds. As two of the tanks rolled past the camp, Sereda quickly ducked behind a tent for cover. However, the third tank halted, and its commander stepped out to inspect the area. Sereda knew he had to act fast. His rifle lay out of reach, resting on a sack of potatoes. Instead, he grabbed the nearest weapon, his axe. With a deep breath, he emerged from cover and charged at the German commander, screaming at the top of his lungs. The sudden attack caught the commander off guard, and he scrambled back into the tank in panic. The tank's machine gun immediately opened fire, spraying bullets indiscriminately. Sereda, however, positioned himself behind the gun and remained unharmed. Thinking quickly, he grabbed a tarp and threw it over the tank's turret, obstructing the crew's vision. Then he used a piece of cloth to cover the co-driver's vision port and his own chef's apron to block the driver's view. With the crew effectively blinded, Sereda began hacking at the machine gun with his axe, shouting for his comrades to bring him tank grenades. Though no one was there to answer, the Germans, unaware of this, were convinced they were under attack by a much larger force. As the machine gun continued to fire, the heat from its barrel caused the metal to warp and eventually bend backward, rendering the weapon useless. In an astonishing feat of bravery, Sereda had single-handedly disabled a German tank using nothing but an axe, sheer determination, and quick thinking. With the tank immobilized, Sereda retrieved his rifle and turned his attention to the crew inside. The Germans, believing they were surrounded by a large Soviet force, were terrified, convinced they had stumbled into a deadly ambush. They surrendered. When they opened the hatch, they were stunned to find only Sereda standing there, his gun trained on them. He forced the Germans to tie each other up, effectively taking them prisoner. When Sereda's unit returned to the camp, they were met with an incredible sight: a disabled German tank, its crew bound and subdued, and Sereda calmly cooking porridge as if nothing extraordinary had happened. His comrades were in absolute awe. Word of Ivan Sereda's incredible bravery spread quickly across the Soviet Union. He was just a cook, a man whose job was to make food for his fellow soldiers. Yet he managed to take down a German tank all by himself, using only an axe and his quick thinking. His story was hard to believe, but it was true. Ivan's actions became a symbol of hope and strength during one of the toughest times of World War II. His story was about more than one man's bravery. It showed that even when things seem impossible, courage and cleverness can make a difference. It proved that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. This idea was vital for the Soviet Union during the war. It gave people hope and reminded them that they could fight back, no matter how dire the circumstances. The Soviet government used Ivan's story to inspire others, making posters and spreading the message that if a cook could stop a tank with an axe, then anyone could contribute to the fight against the enemy. This helped keep spirits high during a very difficult time. Some question whether Ivan's story was too amazing to be true, suggesting it might have been fabricated for propaganda. But the truth is, Ivan's bravery was real. On August 31, 1941, he was awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, along with the Order of Lenin and the Gold Star Medal, the highest honors a soldier could receive. After his heroic act, Ivan's leaders recognized that he was too valuable to remain only a cook. They made him a scout in the Red Army. Soon after, he faced another German tank. This time, he snuck up, dropped a grenade inside, and took out the crew. He even used the tank's machine gun to fight off more enemies. His axe became a symbol of his courage, preserved as a special relic by his unit. Ivan continued bravely throughout the war, participating in crucial battles such as the defense of Leningrad and the battle for Moscow. Although he was wounded several times, he never gave up. After the war, he returned to his village and served as the chairman of the village council. Sadly, the injuries he suffered during the war affected his health, and he passed away in 1950 at the age of 31. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Before Now for more incredible historical stories. Do you have more information about Ivan Sereda? Feel free to drop it in the comments, and we'll see you in the next video.